This video is created by friends, family, and fellow community members in support of the immediate release of Scott Ebanks. Who is Scott Ebanks? In 1970, Scott Ebanks is born to Kay Montgomery and Winston Ebanks, who resided in the city of New York. Returning from Vietnam, Winston Ebanks becomes a police officer for New York. Their marriage dissolves. Kay loses custody of Scott at the age of 11 due to her abusive behavior. Scott is sent to boarding school in Florida by his father. At age 14, Scott returns to New York City to live with his dad. Scott, once a straight-A student, finds himself in a deteriorating relationship with his father. At 15, Scott leaves home and turns to the streets in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Life on the street. For the next 4 years, Scott survives sleeping in abandoned buildings with other homeless teens and stops attending school, yet manages to complete his GED in 1987 on his own. Influenced by peers and limited employment opportunities, he turns to selling drugs and fighting for survival on a daily occurrence. March 15, 1990, corner of Avenue A and St. Mark Street, Manhattan. At 19, Scott finally finds employment at a record company warehouse, yet loses his first real opportunity at gainful employment when Ralph Lopez, a friend and fellow employee, sabotages his employment. Later, he is provoked into a fight with Ralphie, who is directly responsible for his loss of employment. A fight erupts across the street from the notorious Thompson Square Park. Lee Wells, a new friend of Ralphie's, attempts to break up the scuffle by hitting Scott over the head with a trash can lid, which leads others to come to Scott's aid. Lee Wells and his two friends are stabbed. Lee Wells dies. Let's remember that just 3 years prior, the Thompson Square Park riots were a source of great tension for New York City. And now, in 1990, the war on homeless drug pushers and the poor was on. Plea offers. Ali Saladin, the very one who came to Scott's aid, is charged with the murder of Lee Wells. Saladin enters a plea bargain for 2.5 to 5 years and makes a videotape confession that Scott stabbed and killed Lee Wells. Scott is accused of the murder of Lee Wells and offered a plea deal, 8 1/3 to 25 years in prison. Scott takes responsibility for starting the fight, yet does not accept the plea. 3 witnesses, 2 of which were stabbed, identified Ebanks as not responsible for stabbing Lee Wells. Scott hopes the truth would come out that while he started the fight, he did not stab the victim, nor had any intentions of doing so. Trial and sentencing. Supreme Court Justice Carol J. Berkman renders her judgment on July 24, 1991, convicting Scott after a jury trial of murder in the second degree. Justice Berkman sentences Scott to a term of 22 years to life. Later, Ebanks' legal representative filed an appeal, yet it gets dismissed. Saladin will go on to be convicted of 6 other crimes and still resides in the very neighborhood of the occurrence. 22 years to life. Scott will from then on be known as number 91A6231, his DIN number. He spends his first 15 years in maximum security facilities, being transferred from Attica to Comstock and countless others. He is eventually deemed suited for medium security, where he enters Otisville, Hudson, Mount McGregor, and eventually Green Correctional Facility, where he resides today. Get this, while in prison, Scott fulfills all requirements, completing programming and training in horticulture, industry, electrical trades, food service, masonry, wood assembly, welding, lawn and gardens, upholstery, teacher's aid, and even medical services. Transformation. Is Scott a model prisoner? Having already obtained his GED, he completes certificate programs like Alcohol and Substance Abuse Training, ASAT, and Aggression Replacement Training, IRT, satisfying educational, vocational, substance abuse, and violence prevention programming. Before he gets to his first parole board review, he's completed basics of anger management and aftercare addiction counseling. He's promoted to junior group leader, counseling others with addictions and facilitating addiction groups, all while in prison. In 2012 and 2014, Compass risk assessments indicate Scott Ebanks is not a risk to society, nor likely to recidivate. Public defenders and parole attorneys tell us, regardless of behavior, few who defend their innocence gain parole. Scott is denied parole on July 12, 2012, and sentenced to 2 more years. He is again denied in January of 2014 with 2 more years. 25 years later, looking back, we discovered that the war on the poor was won, and an entire neighborhood was transformed. gentrification prevailed. Despite completing all rehabilitative requirements and presenting with a low risk of recidivism, Scott Ebanks remains hostage to New York State Corrections, which appears to still practice in a draconian, punitive manner. Many letters of support testify on Scott's behalf and appear in Scott's files, including those serving in corrections who have come to know Scott personally. He is, as Judge Berkman noted in 1991, an intelligent person, one who does not belong where he is today. Current practices. The New York State Parole Board does not review all the facts of the case and bases their opinion to deny or grant parole solely on the sentencing minutes and the pre-sentencing investigation, which occurred some 25 years ago. Minutes taken at sentencing often contain erroneous and prejudicial information to defendants, including opinions of the probation officer who prepared these documents decades ago. At present, there is no easy fix of these damaging errors. The parole board commissioners do not have access to trial minutes and remain oblivious to many of the mitigating circumstances, relying on only some of the facts. What can we do? Parole reform is needed. We know that the criminal justice system in New York State often gains convictions by any means necessary. Prosecutors gain cooperation from whoever rolls over first, and then builds a case against whoever is left, slighted against poor defendants. Many have been forced to accept substandard legal representation. Truth in sentencing versus truth in parole. Current criminal justice practices are considered an aberration of due process. The judge said that after completing minimum sentence, life is there to allow for additional time if needed. If all rehabilitative efforts have been completed, then why does a 3-person tribunal have final say? A tribunal of commissioners who cannot do their due diligence and a defendant who cannot have an attorney present to ensure justice. In New York State, there are presently 4,000 parole appeals alone, of which only 2,000 get attended to, and from which only 35 reversals have taken place since 2013. The ACLU is completing a scientific study about the maturation process of the human brain. Scott Ebanks is a part of this study. Early indicators revealed that this process is not completed until 25 years of age. To extend the stay for a crime committed by a 19-year-old without cause violates the standards of operating a fair and unbiased criminal justice system. An overwhelmed parole board is no longer a model of rehabilitation. No one in society benefits from this costly, ineffective process. His third parole hearing will be January 2016. Scott is now 45 years old. When he returns to the parole board in January 2016, he will have been incarcerated for 26 years altogether. Enough is enough. Please sign the petition to free Scott Ebanks now at www.freescottebanks.com. Thank you for your support and your time.
Free Scott Ebanks.
Free Scott Ebanks, yo.
Free Scott Ebanks.
Free Scott Ebanks.
Free Scotty Banks in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.